Mm.
But this blue Pluto in Aquarius, it's going to hang around for 20 years. So we're going to see a lot more revelation about UFOs and ET contact. And this, if any time we're going to have disclosure, this is it in the next 20 years. Or we're going to have ETs, turn up over the capital cities. This is the time. It's the energy imprint of that is there.
Okay, so you found the book.
Yes, I found Sandra Ingerman's book, Awaken to the Spirit World. And in the back, I haven't got it in there, but she does have the CD with the drumming that it comes with the book.
Wow. And it's even
Really
got a
cool.
crow on the front.
Yes, yeah. And there was another book too I just grabbed. This is a classic. You probably won't get this anywhere. Aboriginal Men of High Degree. So it talks about the medicine men and the shamans in the
Wow.
Aboriginal community. Very, very interesting. Dates back to, when is it? It's 1945.
Far out.
Yeah.
Far out. Do you think that the spirit of the land affects your shamanism?
Um, that's a good point, actually, because I know a couple of people who do work with clearing spirits off the land, because people have built homes on places where there has been tragic events involving Aboriginal people. So the spirits of the land still roam there. And when they clear the land, then all that sort of activity stops, like poltergeist activity and maybe pets even dying, that sort of thing. So,
Mhm.
and wrappings on the wall and things like that. So yeah, I think it does. Yeah, things that have, I mean, everything that we do, think and say has an energetic imprint, doesn't it? So it leaves that there behind. And if we sort of somehow engage with that, I think it can really play havoc.
Mm. Yeah, when I went to the outback, I actually expected a sort of a outback Aussie cowboy rodeo sort of vibe. And I struck that a little bit, but I was struck by a profound feeling of Aboriginality, a profound feeling, and I felt that I was being watched. I don't know if other people feel that, but obviously that old man appearing to me and giving me that message was, he was watching me, but I felt that I'd entered into a different zone, and when I came back, I felt like I'd brought the outback with me. That I sort of realised that even where I live on the coast here, it's the outback. It's the same. There's that ancient Aboriginal. Well, it's the spirit of the land. I mean, it's Aboriginal, but it's sort of this land too. This Australia, with all its strange marsupials and unusual things. There must be, you said earlier about how all things have a spirit, or creatures and rocks even and twigs, and obviously this is a different place to where our ancestors came from. If we're Europeans or wherever they came from, this is a different place.
Mm. And it's interesting how some people never feel quite at home in a certain place when they immigrate. And yet other people feel like they're coming home when they immigrate. So yeah,
Mm,
it's a strange sort of invisible force or energy that we're connected with.
yeah,
Mm.
I think this is the most important thing for Australia. Not getting into any political discussions, but the lack of encounters with the Aboriginal people and the culture and their knowledge has always horrified me. And I've tried to meet Aboriginal people whenever I can, but you really grow up in the city, hardly
Mm.
ever meeting people. And when you do meet people, they're sort of like us. They've grown up in the city, and I still can feel something about Aboriginal people, even if they grow up in the city. Even the wild young fellas that ask you for a smoke, you know, I always feel a connection to them, and they feel a connection to me, and it's sort of odd, but Yeah, it's a very special country, Australia.
It's unique, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Very
we become
different.
Australians. We really, the land is what makes us Australians. When I was in Scandinavia and Iceland, I did feel my indigeneity there.
Mm, mm,
And when I first came back to Australia, even after just a couple of weeks, there was something a bit odd about this place. The light seemed wrong to me, and could have just been jet lag. But I felt like I needed to be welcomed back here. I'd gone over there and I'd somehow changed frequencies.
yeah. If anyone's watching this who is understands astrology, they'll know that there are reasons for that because the planetary lines run through different countries, different towns on the planet. So I'm fortunate my Venus line actually goes through southeast Queensland, and Venus represents all the things you love and value. So everything that I need in my life on planet Earth is right here where I'm living, and I'm fortunate. But people who aren't uh, who feel mal-located, if I could say it like that, or disoriented, because it'll have something to do with the astrology as well.
Mm.
That's for another topic, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. It's a big topic, that one, and that's a topic I used to. You know, I didn't I didn't poo-poo it, but I used to think, nah, how can planets way out there have anything to do with it? But over time, especially when I got into yoga, and my yoga teachers believed in the astrology, and I got into Ayurveda a little bit, and there's a strong astrological component to that system,
Mm.
a Vedic system. I thought, maybe I don't know. Maybe this is something that's just I've got to learn about. Certainly, ancient peoples believed in astrology, didn't they?
They did, yeah. And the seers as well. Nostradamus, I think, practiced astrology, and various other seers throughout history practiced that as well, and some of the inventors as well, and early spiritualists, and all sorts of people, because it's like the precursor to our understanding of astronomy, really. It's a very ancient science. It's not
Mm,
a it's not a weirdo thing as a lot of people think it is. There's no basis to the reality of it. Actually, there is, and the universe, it moves like clockwork. There's these gears, and different planets travel at different speeds, and the outer planets move slowly, and they're to do with the times we're living in and the evolution of each generation, and even things like in November last year. Pluto moved into Aquarius, and I knew something was going to happen from the sky because Aquarius rules the sky, the cosmos out there. And what did we have? We had all those drone incursions, didn't we? They all
mm.
started. So I thought, well, there you go. That's because Pluto's there to reveal something, to bring it to the surface and show us something. So yeah, it's really interesting.
It is so interesting, and you would know uh, Rupert Sheldrake,
Mm-hmm.
the scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wrote to him ages ago, and we had a bit of a conversation. It was sort of cool that he'd give me his time, but I'd been thinking about the sun being conscious and a conscious being because back in the late 90s when I first got into yoga, I was literally doing salute to the sun. And at the end, I did the sort of up dog. I was like up like this, and the sun just came up over the horizon. And I had an enlightenment. I was like, you are, you are, you're conscious.
Yeah.
And you're not just a big ball of flame. I
Mm.
felt it really powerfully, and I sort of bowed before I went, wow. And I thought, this is our local God. I then started thinking heaps about the sun and what is consciousness, and just because it's flame doesn't mean it hasn't got a brain like we do, but it's conscious. So I looked that up I just started getting into the internet, and Rupert Sheldrake popped up with a essay about is the sun conscious, and then it talked about the sort of clusters, like a school of fish of all the suns in a galaxy, like a great school of fish, and then all the other schools, the other galaxies, and just listening to you then, I thought it makes sense that planets are also conscious. And why wouldn't that have an effect on us if we are all consciousness?
I think so. And I think Earth is going through its own evolutionary story, always, as we are as individuals and collectively, and the various species on the planet, and the planets in our solar system, and our solar system in our galaxy, and blah, blah, blah. It just goes on and on.
Mm.
Yeah, we're all very connected.
Uh, as a male and a very sort of, classic boomer, like a younger boomer, born in the late 50s, brought up in a very military sort of way and very male. And I've sort of noticed society change to much more feminine since the 70s. And at first I didn't like it, but then I started to realize that things were getting kinder and kinder. And then as I got into all this, I realized that women, not all women, it's like you were saying about seeds in people, that so many women just get it and are open to all these things, whereas guys tend to be too logical and, heels are in like, no, that's illogical, that doesn't make sense, it's not scientific, which is
Mm,
the old paradigm. So it's a sort of a conservatism in the way males think. I think it's also a fear of letting go.
mm,
Fear of that's why people won't believe somebody that tell them a wild tale. It's a fear of just relaxing and just taking it in and not resisting, not going, oh no, that's impossible. Just go, oh wow. Just listening to what other people say and let it sort of wash over you. And that's what I don't know as an astrologer what you think about this, but is like the age of Aquarius more feminine energy than the previous one?
it's more mental. It's to do with consciousness, the way we think, what we think about. Yeah, so Aquarius is mind expanding, and we're definitely in the age of Aquarius now. Um, and and you can tell that because Aquarius rules technology and AI and the internet, because it's all about group communication, and group communication about things that come from the sky. But it also is to do with weather as well. So we're seeing a lot more because it's eruptive. Uranus rules Aquarius, so we're seeing a lot more earthquakes, all sorts of cataclysms, because it breaks down, breaks through, breaks up. It changes things. It's transformative. So you can't have transformation without things breaking down. It just has to
Mm,
happen. It's like the old stuff has to go down in like compost, and so that the new season of the world, our world, is what we're interested in, and the turning of the wheel occurs. It just has to
mm,
happen. And we know that chaos always precedes order. It always does. That's that Mandelbrot fractal. It just, it's all over the place, and then it's just creating that order,
mm.
the new
That's
order.
like a chaotic time now. In many ways, I often wonder whether it's just because we have so much more communication. I sometimes watch things from the 70s and it's the same stuff going on. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this was going on back then, but
Well, there
yeah.
are similar things that occurred then astrologically that are occurring now.
Mm,
But this Pluto in Aquarius, it's going to hang around for 20 years. So we're going to see a lot more revelation about UFOs and ET contact. And this, if any time we're going to have disclosure, this is it in the next 20 years. Or we're going to have ETs, turn up over the capital cities. This is the time. It's the energy imprint of that is there. And I know people don't quite understand that, how like you said, how do the planets control all this? It's a big story and I can't tell you straight away, but Yeah, it's just the way it is. And
If they're just lumps of rock under the force of gravity, how could that have anything to do with it? But once you feel the presence of a stone and it talks to you, it's, I'm that sort of person. I hear from stones quite a bit.
exactly.
You think, they're like really big stones up there.
They are, exactly.
Actually, I'll just tell you a story you like. I came home to my little studio in Sydney in the 90s and I kicked my toe on this stone that somebody had just stuck. I guess they'd found it somewhere. It's quite a unique stone, but to hold the door open. And I kicked my toe on it. I wasn't happy, so I picked it up. What idiot put this here? I took it round and I put it in this sort of a storage shed that wasn't really a shed. It was just, you know, the lock didn't work, so we used to get in there and put stuff in there sometimes to store it. So I put the stone in there. I went back. I was about to start painting, and the rock talked to me and said, "I don't like being in here.
Mm.
Please don't leave me in here." I thought, please get me out of here. And I just couldn't paint because it was like the rock was talking to me. And I went down and I picked it up. I said, "Righto, rock, what am I supposed to do with you?" And it said to me as clear as day, "I'm the guardian, put me in the garden.
Mm.
I'm the guardian, put me in the garden."
Mm.
So I walked around. There was these two little gardens that really didn't have anything in them at the front door. So I put it in there and it was like, cool, I like being here. I'm the guardian. I'll
Mm.
guard you. It was sort of like that. And the guardian's still up 25 years later, it's still up the
Yeah.
backyard. But I heard that as clear as day. So I go back into the studio and I had this sort of a layman's guide to Jung. And I thought, I wonder what this says about stones and rocks. It's like this whole chapter. I was going, holy mackerel. And it was saying, stones and rocks represent consciousness
Mm.
and the deepest consciousness. And it had yogis with rocks around their necks. And I was like, whoa, bam, like that's rocks are conscious. Who would have thought? And then I started to hear from them, really big ones in the bush and little ones, just certain ones. But, and that's, people find that very hard to, if they're not open, they think, oh, come on, it's just a rock.
I get it. I get it. I love crystals, so I have a lot of them, and I've done some crystal healing over the years. And in summer, I have a fireplace here, and in summer, sometimes I put them sitting on the top when I'm not using the fireplace, just cover it in crystals. And this one day, I was moving them all to dust them, and I picked up this piece of picture jasper, and as I picked it up, this electric shock just ran straight up my arm, completely out of the blue. And I thought, wow. And it was like, hey, I'm here, like, or you've disturbed me, that sort of feeling. And it
Yeah.
was like, wow, well, okay, I'm putting you back now. You know, now it sounds stupid to a lot of people. It sounds like you're crazy, but I'm not a crazy person. I don't come out with that stuff very easily. Actually, I'm quite grounded. Um, but it's just what happened. And this is, how does a crystal talk to you is a bit like, well, how does a planet control the goings on the on Earth? It's the same question. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, I just made a short video about the whistleblower, Matthew Brown,
Hmm.
at the end of his, this long conversation with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. He says we've been fed a false science. We've been taught a science that's essentially to control us,
Yeah.
and that hit me hard. I thought, yes, that's, of course it is. Of course, it was just great to hear a whistleblower saying this is what he gleaned from all these highly classified things he'd seen.
Mm.
That we live in a matrix, he says, and we're fed a false science, which tells us UFOs aren't real, astrology is not real, talking to rocks is not real, all these other things. It can only be because they're scared of it, could only be to hold us back.
The result is we end up living in an abstract of reality. And that's not good for us. And whose right is it to withhold that information and paint that false picture for us anyway? It's not right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or what I said earlier about women being much more open to these things. I've noticed over 30 years that men, like older men like me, are much more likely to be on board with this now. Whereas it used to be, I would just always hit walls with guys and be really cautious about saying anything slightly unusual to males. They'd always, oh, no, come on, mate, you know. But it's not like that now. Men have been affected by this. It is a revolution. And I think the women have helped us a lot. Our women have.
Yeah. Curiously, I was looking at the analytics on the UFO Research Queensland Facebook page yesterday, and it gives you the breakdown of the percentage of the genders that actually like the page, and women outweigh the men.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
And did you think, was it like that in the old days?
It could have been, but maybe they just didn't speak up much. Women didn't speak up as much in general, I think, in those days. But
Hmm.
when I first got involved in UFO Research Queensland in the late 80s, you really didn't hear anything much from any female presenters. It was a very male-dominated field of research. And
Mm.
because it was really focused on the analysis, the stuff, what I call the stuff, which is you saw a UFO, what was the shape, what was the color, what was the direction, how high was it, all
Yeah,
these sorts of things, which is
yeah.
the objective part of it, the quantitative data. But then women don't focus on that. They focused on, well, who are these people? What's going on here? Like the more of the occupants, and they were the ones who actually came forward about their close encounter experiences, abduction experiences, far
Right.
more likely to do that. Whereas men were very hesitant to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, you get cut off by other blokes. It used to be you'd be persona non grata really quick, especially at a workplace. I used to, be a labourer, building, and in those fields, you couldn't really express anything un-Aussie masculine. Otherwise, you were immediately a suspect.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
just being an artist was, even in the 90s, being an art. If you said you're an artist, it was immediately like, oh, you're a weirdo, you know.
There's another aspect to that, though, David, is that the women who were coming forward were talking about having eggs removed,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So, and women are far more used to talking about gynecological problems to doctors and to their female friends than males would be about talking about their problems to men, other men.
mm,
And whether we like it or not, there is a darker side to the UFO subject. And some of it, I had many reports of women talking about being taken on board a craft and being raped. Now, that didn't make sense to me. I thought, what? What the heck's going on? But when I heard more and more and more of these, they were forced to have sexual intercourse with either other human males or with beings who didn't look human, or beings who started out looking as human, and then through the experience, the women saw them as who they truly were, which was non-human.
mm.
Now, this is the darker side of the subject, which it's really taboo, and not a lot of people, not a lot of researchers sort of talk about this much. And I remember there was this one fellow, and actually this is quite common with men, who they're put into a situation of like an orgy type of situation. And I think that's to do with their mind control so that these non-human intelligences, aliens, can actually, collect the semen from them. So
Mm.
that's another way of doing it rather than freaking them out and putting them on a table and putting something over their genitals and doing that. They'll put something in their mind of a sexual orientation and then capture the semen that way. This did go on. It really, I received quite a few reports of this. Um, so, then we've got the whole question of hybrid children. Are they really out there? Are there other,
Yeah.
can we actually hybridize humans with aliens? And if we can, does that mean that we're actually genetically related, right? So
Are we humans? Are we are we the results of experiments
exactly.
years
Yeah,
ago?
yeah.
I've got a book up there. It's called Alien Abduction Mysteries, and like I said, I like the older books. And there's some stories in there that are very cringy. Like things that happen to young people, and it's like, oh, what the hell are the aliens on about, man?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people want them to all be light, good, goodness and light and that, but it doesn't seem like they are.
It doesn't appear to be that way. And I think that this sort of darker story is really swept under the carpet. We don't
Mm.
want to touch that. And you know what? Maybe that's got something to do with why there is no disclosure. Why these groups of people don't want that information getting out there in a fully exposed way.
Mm.
Who knows? It's a really big story, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, you know how people are, they struggle with too much detail. Like, I was a nurse and all my life people tell, oh, don't go, no, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear about it.
Mm,
It's just too much for me. And the same with this sort of subject. It's dark and it's a side of life that for many people, they prefer not to look at it. They'd rather think that it's Disneyland, helps them sleep. But
mm,
when you really look at it, yes, there's some extreme things seem to go on, and even to the point of people getting cancer from exposure to these craft. The American guy who's up wood cutting with these other guys, Travis Walton.
mm,
You know, it seemed like he got too close. They took off and they sort of half fried him,
mm.
and they took him into the craft, and he talked about them. He's totally terrified, but they put him into all sorts of states, and it seems like they brought him to life. It sounds like they killed him. So they worked on him, took about a week, and then put him back. Just sort of random. Like, oh, someone
Well,
picked that up,
yeah,
left him by a phone box.
naked.
Yeah.
Poor Travis though, but I met him, I think, oh gosh, it was about 2015 or something at a conference down in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, and he was sitting at our dinner table. But by that time, he'd come around to a different way of thinking about his experience because he was transferred from one craft to another craft
Oh.
by these beings that were definitely not human to beings that were much more human and probably understood the human anatomy. So they
Mm.
transferred him over. So he actually saw it as like an ambulance service that these first group who accidentally killed him, if they did, um, transferred him to a group of aliens who knew how to fix him, and then they put him back. So he has quite a different view of his experience now to what he did initially.
Wow, that's cool. I haven't heard about that
Mm.
at all, about the two different races. And
Yeah.
I've another one of my favorite books is called A Field Guide to Extraterrestrials.
Mm.
Being an artist, I always like books where people can actually draw. And well, there's really, really some odd ones, like those ones that picked up those guys at, was it Pensacola? Those two guys who were fishing.
Pascagoula.
Pascagoula, that's right. They were like, even the way they've drawn them in this book, it's like, okay, what's that? Some
Yes.
weird robot, looks like a cross between a robot and a snowman. It's got a sort of a,
It's very strange, isn't it?
yeah.
There's a lot of masquerading going on in the subject by these non-human beings. And I just dragged out a book. recently. I just happen to have it here. I don't know if you've seen this one. I thought you might be interested.
Oh,
Heavenly
well, yes.
Lights.
Hmm.
Have you read that one?
I haven't. I know about Fatima, and I think Mauro Biglino talks about it. Um,
Well, in this book, the two authors, they went back to the original Portuguese documentation of the event. Um, who was it? Dr. Joaquim Fernandes and Fina Damata. And, the idea is that, or their thinking is, if you do go back to the original documentation, you find that the descriptions of my lady who appeared was certainly not human. I mean, she had
mm,
black eyes. She was small. She had some sort of, can't remember whether she was carrying something around or had something attached to her in the front of her body. I can't quite remember now, um, but and I've wondered how many of these type of things occur where they are portrayed, perhaps, or interpreted, or if it's misinterpretation, it's never corrected by these beings, right? That this is some sort of spiritual being, but who's having an influence on a community. And let's face it, I think it happened in 17 or 19 in
mm.
um, in Portugal, and it was in a Catholic community. So what the heck are they doing? If they are non-human beings, actually I like that term better than non-human intelligences. If they are non-human beings, then what are they doing? And then they're giving a prediction to the kids about they gave the kids, the children, various information. Then they gave them a date that they would appear somewhere, and by that time, over a 6-month period, a whole group of people had gathered there on that day, and some very strange things happened. So what was that all about?
Yes, it's like a story, isn't it? It's like some kind of science fiction movie. And in
Yeah.
fact, that's what we're living in, Where, but that's great. I've become more interested in Catholic saints over
Mm.
the years because I grew up as a Protestant, Scottish Presbyterian, and then Uniting Church, and I almost became a reverend minister. I was going to do um, a doctorate in divinity, but being a nerd, what I really wanted was study ancient Hebrew and Greek. That was that turned me on. Was like, that'd be so cool to learn those languages. But yeah, being good Protestants, we were like Catholics and their saints. It's all the work of the devil. But
I know.
yeah, now I look at it and think, wow, there's great tales here of paranormal powers, of beings, all sorts of stuff.
And what about Joan of Arc? She was hearing voices that were telling her what to do. But who
Yeah.
was that really? Who was she really communicating
And
with?
how did a 16-year-old girl lead a medieval army of barbarians in heavy armor and, about as patriarchal as you're ever going to get? Yet they listened to this young girl. There must have been stuff going on around her that they went, whoa, this is God. She's got the power.
And what was the agenda of those voices?
Yeah.
We know what the agenda was, the story is, but what was the bigger agenda about that? What's going on there? And that makes me think about, well, how much, let's call them aliens, how much have aliens um, maneuvered, jockeyed, prodded the human race in certain directions? And if they've done that, then, like you said, are we really, are we in the petri dish and we're really an experiment and they're seeing
Yeah.
how they can move us around, maneuver us to grow in some ways and other ways? And phew.
Well, one of the things that Matthew Brown said that also shocked me, he said, he was asked, Jeremy Corbell said, why are they here? And, George said the same thing, but he said, well, there's different possibilities, but one of them is that we're entertainment. And
Yes.
I've actually written a novel which hasn't been published yet about people recreating historical periods, and these futuristic people are able to just voyeuristically watch, say, the Middle Ages, just watch everything, but the people in the thing think they're in the Middle Ages. They've sort of been recreated. But I shuddered. I thought that is really possible that they're
Mm,
all sitting back with their popcorn watching you and I have a chat. Like, who knows? Like, it's the way it happens sometimes, as you said, doesn't really make sense. It's like, what's the point? But
mm,
they also are often seen historically to do with battles. And the start of my next book will be, it's more about, the first one's more about ancient times. This one's more about the Viking Age and the spirituality of that time. But it starts with the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle for 793 saying, men from the north, heathens from the north came and pillaged and destroyed Lindisfarne and killed many. And in that year, there was great red dragons in the sky and great sheets of light moving fast. It's like, whoa, they were there. And so it's the start of an event. The Viking Age is about to kick off, and everyone's got their subscription to watch,
yeah.
sitting, wherever they come from, watching the Viking Age. And
Exactly. And I think some of the artwork in the religious art is very interesting, which seem to depict UFOs in the background. It can be interpreted that way for sure. But I think there's one in particular piece of artwork you might be familiar with. It's the Baptism of Christ. It's hanging in the Fitzwilliam Museum, done by Art de Gelder, I think. And it's got Christ being baptized by John, and then it's got the four beams of light coming up to a disc up in the sky with a sort of a brightish light in the middle. And I've been trying to think, well, how would you interpret that as a religious person, as opposed to looking at it with through the UFO research eyes? I don't know. I guess it could have been. I think it was done about the 1700s sometime, but yeah, like what on earth is that about? Were they trying to depict something they actually saw?
yeah, well, how did the artist know if it's something that happened at the time of Christ? Obviously, that's a gap of 1700 years.
Yeah.
Doing what I'm doing, I've sort of realised how much must have been destroyed, how much evidence got just chucked on the fire and maybe dragged back to the Vatican. That's my favourite theory, that it's all sitting in the basement. All these Norse sagas that the church went, no, no, you're not telling this story. This one's got pictures in it, and it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
too real. We'll just put that in our library for those in the know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, those. I know the paintings you're talking about. There's another one. I think it's called the Annunciation, where this beam hits Mary in the head, and there's a like, what the heck is that? It looks like classic flying saucer.
Is that the one where it comes through the wall? The beam comes through the
Yeah, she's sort of pretty and you know
Yes.
very Renaissance. I guess it's 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's hitting her right in the forehead.
Mm. But that's very similar to the Colares event, in Brazil, where the UFOs were flying over the township and they were sending beams through the houses, through the roofs and the walls, and they were hitting people and they ended up with injuries.
Ah,
And then
yeah.
the military came in and they investigated it all and documented it all. And the captain, I think, who was in charge, he I think he committed suicide after that from memory.
Ah,
These are stories I haven't thought about for ages, but there were these craft with beams of light coming right through the roof of homes and hitting people, and they were terrified. So, it's not dissimilar.
yeah. Well, that's it. It's as you said earlier, the language that the Anglo for us, we're hidden behind the barrier of language.
Mm,
I remember as a kid when I started studying the Middle Ages, I had this like a light bulb went on. I thought, Uh, I only know what's written in English because I realised there was knightly traditions. There was knights from Prussia and Yugoslavia and all over. I thought there must be so much amazing stuff hidden behind languages, and no one can do it or can afford to do it to translate it into English.
Yes.
And that's, the Norse is classic of that. There's so much I'm discovering as my Icelandic's got a lot better. AI has been helping me a lot, and I think that's one of the things that we're going to find is that language barrier is busted open, and we'll be able to read those Portuguese records and obscure languages. I asked ChatGPT how many languages it spoke, and it just gave me this great list.
Oh, wow.
Holy mackerel! You speak Old Gaelic and
Really?
yeah, Sanskrit, Old Gaelic,
Oh.
Old Norse. Like there's a difference between modern Icelandic and Old Icelandic, and it's a master of both. And these books I study, one of the things about them is that they have the Old Norse at the in the back three quarters, which I actually find easier to read than modern Icelandic. It's not as complex. It doesn't have the vocabulary, but there's these scholarly introductions, and no one except Icelanders has ever read them. And my professor friend, I've said, can I find translations of this? No. We've only got like 350,000 people here, and people haven't got time to do that, to put it into English for a couple of people like you who want to read it. So I've started to take photos and give it to ChatGPT, and I learned things about this is so important, but it's just unknown. I wanted to ask you about abductions in the 60s because I'm really not aware of it, but I've heard indications of something that might have been an abduction in the 60s. But have you found in your research and in the files that there was reported abductions back then?
Yeah, well, we all know about the Betty and Barney Hill case from that time. Before them, there was the Antonio Villas-Boas case. I think that was in Brazil in the 50s.
Ah,
And the researchers, they sat on that for a while because it was a very early abduction involving gathering of semen.
right.
And they didn't release that for 5 years, the story for 5 years after they actually documented it because of that very reason, I expect. Um, and that case involved a young man who was a farmer, and there was a spaceship. He was taken on board the craft. He was then sexually stimulated by this woman. I think she had red hair, and they had intercourse, and then she indicated to him that I think she patted her abdomen and went like this to the heavens, as if to say, well, I'm taking your sample up there with me. It really spun him out for quite a while. And then there's in the 30s in Australia, there is a case of, I remember Rex Gilroy was talking about, and Rex Gilroy is a late researcher in Australian ufology. And I think Rex has it in one of his books, actually, about an Aboriginal woman who talked about her abduction experience. That was, gosh, I think that was 33, maybe.
Oh,
So yeah, they did exist before the Hills case. I'm just trying to rattle my head about others that I remember from that early time period. I didn't hear a lot, but the Antonio Villas-Boas case was it was a big case when it eventually did come out, and it got spoken about quite a bit. And that was really, that was a bit like the Peter Curry case here in Australia, in Sydney, where Peter himself, a more modern case, where a similar situation occurred, where that was documented in the book by Bill Chalker called Hair of the Alien, because after Peter's experience of having this sexual experience with a blonde, blue-eyed, I think it was, woman, and there was also an Oriental woman there too, that he actually found a hair wrapped around his male parts, and then that was analysed. The DNA was looked at, and it turned out to be some really, really obscure Mongolian background to it,
Wow.
which, he said, I don't know how that happened because he's in Sydney. Yeah, and that was very strange too. So I believe his story has just been recently re-interviewed by a gentleman, an Australian podcaster. Sorry, I can't think of his name at the moment. That's a very interesting story too. Peter's had, because he originally came from Lebanon, and he had some experiences in Lebanon as a child where time stood still and those sorts of things.
Mm.
Like Uri Geller, he had the similar sort of experience when
I
he,
was just literally thinking that.
yeah,
I thought Yuri Geller, and then you said his name.
yeah, yeah. Uri Geller had a similar experience where as a kid, he was in the park over the road from his home, and he saw this. Yep, there you go. Look at that. Well,
He
guess
wrote,
what? I got a twin.
"Oh wow, how cool is that?"
Yeah.
There you go. That's a little miracle serendipity for the day.
Hey, there you go. That's how it works, isn't it?
I thought I was the only one.
No, sorry. But he had a similar experience where I think he saw a shiny light, and then the next thing he knows, he's on the ground as a kid, and I think he's in a fugue state, and he sees this being with a hood or a cloak or something over him, and then he has missing time, I think. Yeah, so, and then he goes on to have all these abilities,
Yeah.
burns and clocks not working, to watches not working.
I said to him once, I've only ever emailed him, I've never talked to him. I said to him, maybe you're the leader of us star children, maybe because when I met him, it felt like it was meant to be. I was standing beside him in tweed heads back in the 80s, and we were watching a juggler who was incredible. And he was just a guy. I thought, handsome looking guy, looked like an Israeli. I said, I feel like I know you, but I don't know why. And he says, do I look like anybody? I said, actually, you sort of look like Uri Geller. He goes, yeah, well, that's because I am Uri Geller. And, it's good to meet you, man. I've always believed you. I've always
Yeah.
thought you were fair dinkum. And I used to just send him articles. He asked me to send him any books and articles I found with him in them. He had this project so I used to, when I was in an op shop, I'd look around and I'd find stuff about him sometimes, and I'd just mail it over to England. How did you
Yeah. Say that again, you dropped
how
out then.
did you meet Yuri?
I didn't meet him. Well, I did. I saw him at a conference in Brisbane and in my hometown. And oh gosh, there must have been a couple of hundred people there that day. And he came around and gave us some seeds or something. Yeah, and we had to hold them in our palm. And he said, now I want you all to say, grow, grow, grow. They didn't sprout for me, but they sprouted for other people.
Wow.
He also had people, I think he had them bringing along old watches and clocks that didn't work and put them out the front of the room. And then some of them actually started working. And there were also forks as well, forks and spoons that had bent for some people. So, yeah, it's definitely real. The times that he's been caught out, I think, where he's trying to make things actually occur at the time he's on TV. I know there was a well-known show here, a daytime show where people said he had a magnet and he was trying to move something. But these things don't always work when you're nervous and anxious about
Hmm.
in that situation. So
I mean, they're hostile.
yeah, and he really wanted for it to work and show people because he has stopped. It has been documented that he stopped the Big Ben, the clock
Right.
on Big Ben, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, and I think definitely it had something to do with his close encounter as a child.
Absolutely. It does seem so, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
did you have a close encounter as a kid?
not as a kid. No, I was already about 29, 30, 31, probably about 30, 31 when I had experience like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I mentioned star children before, but do you ascribe to that idea that the stars
Um,
are somehow
what do you mean by let's you qualify it first?
um, Yeah, what do they call them? Indigo children. It's
Oh,
people who've had an anomalous birth that don't always feel they belong here on the earth. Usually highly intelligent, susceptible to sunlight or don't like sunlight, have psychic experiences, feel that they are a bit of a cuckoo in their family, like everyone else is a certain way and they don't quite fit.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's sort of a list that I could think off the top of my head.
That term first arose in a book by John Spencer called Gods of Aquarius, where during he and I think his wife, I can't quite remember was his wife, but he was traveling around and he was talking about, I think it was about the UFO subject, but he found there was a demographic of people. Now, this is going back a while. This is before anyone had heard about the star children phenomenon or indigo children or crystal children. I think it was John Spencer. He used to be the president of the British UFO organization. Yeah, there's certain demographic they felt very different to other people. The way they were described, they didn't say it, but he said it was like they're a little bit more advanced, in tune, awake, that sort of thing. And I can't remember whether he said they had abilities, but I have actually written an article about the origins of the star children. It's up on our website, and people can go there and read it, and how it's sort of evolved over time. Different people have picked it up and run with it and changed it and all that sort of thing. But if they visit our website, which is uforq.org,
Mhm.
O-R-G, there's the articles up there.
Oh, fantastic. Do you feel that if these star children are real, or if it's a real phenomenon, that they tweak certain kids, or do you think it's more they actually create somehow and put back in the womb? You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
don't want to be blasphemous, but even the Jesus story and the
Yeah,
John the Baptist story, one's a virgin and one's a
yeah,
woman past menopause.
yes,
That's not unheard of in the Bible. People
yeah,
don't often talk about it, but Abraham's wife
yeah,
had the little fella. Was it Jacob?
yeah, the
Yeah,
child.
like really old. She was like in her 90s.
Yes,
I don't know, but
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether they're what you would call maybe hybrid children or from the stars, but I do know that there is a group of people. There's a book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron, and she talks about highly sensitive people. And I do find that those types of people fit into the category of people who report close encounters, that they're very sensitive types. And yeah, there's a whole list of things that, like I call the contact syndrome, where there's a tendency towards vegetarianism or veganism. Um, and it's similar for near-death experiences. There's less concern about the material world or whether they're liked or not, and they're just more about love and loving their family, loving their friends, being kind and charitable. And success is sort of like an inside job, not an outside job, those sorts of things,
yeah,
being a successful person. And a lot of those people try to unjob, they try to have a much more balanced life. They want to, um, like they'll turn their abilities into work,
yeah,
so if they've developed precognitive abilities, they might become mediums, or if they've developed healing abilities, they might become massage therapists, which has happened to someone I know who I met when he was 18. He's now about 50, and we've remained friends for a long time because of that, through him telling me about his experiences. Um, so he was a nurse and he gave it all up and became a massage therapist in a retreat center, his own retreat center. So, there's this switch towards different ways of living for those people. Are they star children? I don't know, but they have had close encounters, lots of multiple sightings in their life. How do you put it all together? It's a bit of a jigsaw, isn't it?
Mm. And I guess it's a personal research to find out if you feel those things have happened to you and find out. That's what I love about talking to somebody like yourself, I learn things about things that I haven't heard and connections that then get me excited about going down that particular research route.
Mm.
Especially like your books. Like if you've got any other books you want to share.
I do. I just pulled out a couple more. Previously, we were talking about shamanism, and this is Inner Paths to Outer Space. And so it covers things like DMT, for
Mm,
example, the brain zone psychedelic. How does this all connect with consciousness? Talks about the ayahuasca experience, which people often try as well to go have these journeys. The shaman's journey, whether it's supernatural or natural. How can shamans talk to plants and animals? Close encounters of the ancient kind and spontaneous DMT release. Hypnosis, past life regression, meditation, and the sacred voyage beyond science fiction. Interesting book, this one.
yeah.
Very interesting book. Yeah, there's that one. And we also just wanted to bring up, I guess we're running out of time because we've been going for a couple of, this is part two, I believe. This one about CE5, because this is really popular at the moment. And this book is written by Dr. Richard Haynes, and it's a collection of experiences that people have had where they are calling in or feel that they are calling in UFOs basically.
Right.
The thing with doing that, and I'm bringing this up because, oh, by the way, there's 242 case files exposing alien contact. This is the human initiated contact experience. The thing I wanted to talk about, because this has become such a popular thing to do now because of Stephen Greer,
Yeah.
little app that you can get on your phone and that sort of stuff, is that there is a bit of a cautionary tale here, because I was talking to someone last night about this, who mentioned that he thought that the CE5 experience was sort of like a modern day seance. You're calling in something, but you really don't know what you're calling in.
Who are you dealing with?
I love that term. It's a modern day seance. And I just thought, yeah, he's right. I know about you don't know what you're calling in, but yeah, it is like a seance. And we do know historically that that can bring in a trickster energy.
Mm,
So, one of the first things that I thought about with the UFO subject and near death experiences was that, can ETs masquerade as spirit beings, our loved ones, family members, friends who've died? Can they manipulate our minds? Yes. Yes, they can. Can they, masquerading, manipulating? I can't think what else I thought about, but there are those aspects to it. So we have to be careful, I think, that when we think we're talking to ETs through a CE5 experience, maybe we're not, right? Maybe it's something else. And I just say, people say, do you practice the CE5 protocols? No, I don't, because I've had sightings and I didn't need to do that. And our records are full of over 5,000 reports where other people didn't need to do it either. So
mm,
I don't think it's necessary. But I think people do have to remember that Stephen Greer, or the origin of Greer's protocols, developed from his own near-death experience. So there's something about that as well that people need to look into. And you can actually look him up on YouTube, put in Stephen Greer, near-death experience, and you'll find where he talks about that and how he developed protocols from that experience.
mm. Wow, that's really useful and sage advice. I'm a cautious person, a bit overcautious. I was always the kid that everyone else is going, come on, let's climb up this tree and jump off this cliff and it'll be all fine. And I'm going, oh, but there might be a log down there, or maybe that thing will break. Ah, a chicken, whatever. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, yeah, if you've had experience with negative entities, you don't want to call in things that you don't know who it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I know, and I've cautioned many people about that over the time because, you know, using ayahuasca to have a psychedelic experience to speed up your ability to have like this journey into other realms, it's really bypassing the growth that you need to be prepared for what you might meet on the other side, which can really spin you out and make you paranoid and all sorts of things.
Yeah,
And you can die from taking ayahuasca. I
really.
don't think people really understand that. It has to be done by, if you're going to do it, it has to be done in a particular environment by a person who's well trained and a lot of knowledge in the field. I wouldn't touch it because one, you don't need it. You can achieve the same thing with drumming. But also it's just dangerous. So people go off on these ayahuasca retreats and I'm thinking, and I did see a documentary where one person did die.
Wow.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely playing with psychic fire.
Mm. Mm.
Uh,
Actually, I've hosted many international speakers at meetings here, and they always say, you Australians are such an attentive audience. You're there, every word, like the
yeah,
Americans forget it. They're having a chat to their neighbor here and they're doing something here and they're not very attentive. But you guys, you're really with it. You're on, you're switched on.
yeah. Well, that's why you're so wonderful. You're so on. You're really totally into all the things you're into, and you're a wise woman. You know, you're full of wisdom, full of
Well, I don't know about that, but I've been around a while.
yeah. But you're not that
Along
old.
with
You're
you.
still looking really young. So you probably live to over 100, I reckon.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, let's end it there. You know, I'm in the club. We can always get together again.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah,
but
there's
thank
so
you so
much.
much. That was really cool. I gained a lot, and I'm going to get a lot of cool questions coming through about this from the people who watch. I
Oh,
know they're going to love this. So
great.
you'll probably be called back. They'll probably say, "Come on, you got to have that lady back again." Cheryl's cool.
Yeah, we've just scraped the surface, believe it or not.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I think you've done a lot of thinking and experiencing,
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking.
and I'm going to go on a book buying spree.
Well, enjoy. Nothing like browsing through a bookshop or online looking at books. Yes.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much, and
Thanks, Dave. Thanks very much for having me.
it was a great pleasure.
Bye for now.